25th of February 2022. You're very welcome back to Real True Education, not fake news. I just don't have my placard here, but still the same channel. Now we're going to take a wee look at the Ukrainian situation, and you will be inundated with everything from the media. And as far as I'm concerned, the mainstream media are liars. They're dealing in propaganda, they're not dealing in facts. So I might as well get my wee bit out here. Now, about 2006, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and its policy is that if one member state is attacked, they all join in and fight off the enemy. And it invited Georgia, which is very close to Russia and southern Russia, and the Ukraine to become members of NATO. And this would be like Ireland inviting the Isle of Man to join with the Irish Republic without the consent of its people or the British. Now, having said that, most people in Ukraine and in Georgia would prefer the Western way of going on. As bad as it is, they think it's better than it really is, but they would prefer it to the sort of a bearish drudgery that Russia was always and probably always will be. But still, the nuances of the feeling of the Russian people and the Russian politics, and this applies to them all, should have been taken into account. The Russians feel that from about 1990 on they were humiliated, that the West really went to town, and instead of trying to build up a partnership with Russia, they set up to try and destroy it. But I think that Georgia and the Ukraine were invited to join NATO. But I would go a little further than that. And sometime after that, there was what they called the Minsk Agreement, the MINKS, I think it is, Minsk Agreement. And in that agreement, it was agreed that they would try and improve the situation in the eastern states, Donbass and all these places, these few places, and they try and demilitarize it, get rid of the bitterness, get it back to a bit of prosperity, and leave it that it wouldn't be a threat to either Russia or NATO. Let them get on. And NATO have broken, and the Americans have broken that deal 100%. They have just forgot about it, and President Putin has now announced that it's dead. It no longer exists. But remember, Hunter Biden, the president's Biden's son, had big dealings with the with Ukraine energy companies, billions of pounds. He made an awful lot of money. And the Ukrainian people, for better or for worse, did not elect anything like what they should have had. They should have had good, wise government there, and if it had to be done right, today's impasse wouldn't happen. But they elected and let in these kind of semi-gangsters, really semi-gangsters, a lot of them anyway. And the fact that Biden was tied up with them says a lot. But America led Georgia to some degree, but more so the Ukraine, up the garden path. They led them up the garden path. They led them to believe that if there was a war, as there is now, they'd help them out. Excuse me now. That they'd help them out. Now, many say, and I'm inclined to think it is right, and I'm slow to say this, there is a movement for a new world order. And this is probably led by George Soros. And I don't have to go into its motives here. It's certainly not for the ordinary person. So what's its goals? It's climate justice, they call this. Climate justice. LGBTQ, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transvestite and queer. I emphasise, I have nothing in principle against people who are of an alternative sexual orientation, but I don't want it shoved down my throat or my children's throat or grandchildren's throat. But this is a big part of neutralising the whole Western way of life. Pacifism. Until the truckers in Canada come out to protest, and we soon see the pacifism there. Trudeau declared a state of emergency and walloped the people and pushed them out, and took their money out of the banks, which is the worst of all. Now, also we've seen with the Black Lives Matter and all of this and the George Floyd thing about how certain people were allowed to riot and burn and loot, but when the ordinary decent person did it, they were arrested and treated like criminals. Another part of it is no borders. That's a big thing. Unlimited migration. Cancel culture. You cancel everything connected with the past. You take down statues and you do all this. And then another one now is racist regret. Oh, I have to apologise, I'm white. This is the latest. So, then there's the anti-New World Order, of who I certainly am one. It's those who are opposed to the New World Order. And they included former President Donald Trump, Marine Le Pen in France, and all of those, all the rest of them. Oh, Nigel Farage of UKIP, and in England, Nigel Farage, so that's Trump, Le Pen and Farage. And there'll be other minor groups, and I'm one of them. And then all the rest are what we call woke. They're all into this stuff. You know, if they're going to appoint a general for the American Army now, I'd no doubt it'll have to be a woman who dresses as a man, who declares themselves as a transgender. She'll have to be half or full black, and she'll have to be lesbian, gay, bisexual, or queer. All of those will have to be ticked to get her in. And she's going to be the one that the Ukraine is relying on to defend them from Putin and the Russians. Now, there's no doubt too that this New World Order and this woke crowd, they wanted to extend eastward. They want to bring their control right all over the world, and they do not want individual member states. Excuse me for drinking tea. They don't want individual member states. And they had it all lined up that nice and handily take in and get NATO into Georgia, probably Azerbaijan, and the Ukraine. And they are aided and abetted by the likes of Radio Television Sheridan, BBC, CNN, with pure lies. I mean, on the eve of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, RTE devoted at least a quarter of its news to wildfires and climate change. Climate change. Drilling this into people, firing it into them. They have the advertisements all done so that they're multicultural. Drilling this in and continually telling us, and we the people, we have to take this. That was on the eve of the invasion. They have propaganda everywhere, and they're liars, and they keep out those who have a different view. And so all this renewable energy and all this and the high electricity prices is all a result. This doesn't work, but it might work if every country went along with it. And I can tell you that Vladimir Putin is not going to go along with it. They're driving it home, and they got a shock when he invaded the Ukraine. Well, I got no shock. I got no shock at all. It was well flagged. And the next thing will be the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania and Estonia, and China will then take Taiwan. Now, they'll do that before Trump possibly will become president on the 17th of January 2025. And that's a long way away. Look at how much has changed in 1 week. The fact of the matter is, neither NATO, Europe or the United States can do anything, and sanctions are not that effective when you consider that they have taken away their ability to have fuel, to have energy independence. that Trump was working towards energy independence, that Ireland has divested from energy independence, oil and gas, that oil and gas is at a terrible high price. Sorry. Now, sorry that I had the phone on, but I had to take an urgent call to do with the farm, and I just couldn't turn it off. So sorry about that. Doesn't really matter, folks. I hope you understand. So the point about it is, what's really happening here is a battle for supremacy in the whole world. And China is the up and coming. Even though its economy is in tatters, they have a command economy and they can work their way out of it. And anyway, nobody can do anything about them. The idea that somebody will resist the Chinese Communist Party is nonsense. They'll use brute force and they won't accept it. And the idea that someone can resist Putin is nonsense. These are dictatorships. And democracy requires a bit of responsibility, and the West has failed to show it. It's not that wise for Putin to rely so much on China. China has already recognized what's happened, but it's not that wise. But then if he was pushed into a corner, if Trump was in control, he would probably have done a bit of negotiating and said, right, we won't join it in NATO and we'll try and get something better there. He was already harping on about Hunter Biden being into corrupt dealings in the Ukraine. You have now a situation where I'd say you'll see the government of the Ukraine fleeing, and you'll see the military already burning documents and all that in an undignified setup. There's no respect. If the military in the Ukraine were properly led and put up a good battle, we would probably say fair play and there'd be a lot of sympathy for them. Maybe they'll do a bit of that yet. But in many ways, if the West was really serious, this time last week they could have moved troops in around Kiev into the vital installations, American troops. Now that could cause a lot of problems, but they could negotiate from a position of strength. The fact of the matter is, we're dealing with a sissy West that have allowed, the voters there have allowed this to happen. They had Trump in, they lied about him, they railed on him, they kept at him. They brought up false allegations which were meant to be democratic controls, which had no basis, a nothing burger, as Mueller inquiry found. And they pushed this, and they pushed it, and they're still pushing it. Why is there such absolute opposition? And I believe the reason is this new world order, which is a horrible philosophy, and which maybe, in the end of the day, maybe we're actually better off with what's happened. And maybe the people of the Ukraine may, in the end of the day, not be much worse off. This new world order to destroy everything we built, to destroy the use of fossil fuel, to lie to us about what can be done with renewable energy, to get Germany to disarm to take down its nuclear power stations, to put Europe relying on the very Russia that's now doing this, to stop Europe having its own independent supply of fuel, to demonize fuel. The Greens opposed and stopped an LPG, liquid petroleum gas station import place being built in the Shannon Estuary from America. That's what they want. How they coordinate that, or how these ones that's out protesting, all these eco Greta Thunberg types, how they all manage to coordinate this, or whether it's a natural instinct or whether it's coordinated. I have no doubt it is coordinated. I'm not entirely sure why it's so successful. But we see the effects. The people of the Ukraine are on their own. There is no hope. There'll be summits, there'll be sanctions, there'll be condemnation. Putin is only laughing at them. He's only laughing at them. The silly idiots. That's all he's doing. And they've left this open. We saw what America did in Afghanistan. They were there, they could have hung on, They could have tried to get a better solution there. They left the poor people to starve and left some of their own American people stranded there. What better signal could Putin have that the time was right? Couple that with the winter time, the cold weather and the reliance on fuel, and his ability to freeze the people in Europe, and you have the chess move. They say the Russians play chess, the Americans play poker. You see the strategic relevance of what he's done. They can be shocked all they like. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and all of these, they have a lot to answer for. But that's history. And we'll see you back for something else. Give me a thumbs up and a thumbs down. The Ukraine were led up the garden path by a useless NATO. And even NATO as it is, who's there to fight? Who have to fight? Probably nobody. Folks, a thumbs up or a thumbs down at 16 minutes. Thank you very much. We'll see you back.